I know that the story is that the people who bought the plot for them had to lie and say it was for somebody else. So from the beginning, nobody even wanted their dead bodies.
In 1953, at the height of the Cold War, Ethel and Julius Rosenberg were tried and sentenced to death for treason by the U.S. government. The couple became icons that symbolized the hysteria of the McCarthy period. 50 years after their death, Ivy Meeropol directed Heir to an Execution, a granddaughter's story. She wanted to find the true identity of her grandparents and understand what drove the couple to sacrifice their lives, leaving behind 2 sons. Ivy Meeropol directed, narrated, and starred in the HBO documentary, which is now available on DVD.
Sorry. Hello. I'm looking for a particular grave. Can you give me a map? And what's the name? It's Rosenberg. Ethel and Julius Rosenberg. You can't do that location? The main questions that I had were always, who were my grandparents as people? As real human beings. What were they like? What were they like as a couple? What were they like as parents? Because they were as iconic to me as they were to everybody else.
Playing a central role in the film is Ivy's father, Michael Meeropol. He was 10 years old at the time of his parents' execution.
Early on in her career, when she was in her early 20s, she wanted to do something, whether it be a film or a book or something like that. We strongly discouraged her. We said, don't be identified professionally as this. And then she came back to us, about 3-4 years ago. She said, I really want to do this. And then we said, fine.
Though I was always curious, I hadn't asked him, what was it like to visit them in prison? What was it like to know that they were going to die? Things like that. So it's interesting that it takes, picking up a camera and deciding that I want to tell the story to the world to then ask my father these questions.
The lack of physical evidence during the trial created doubt over the Rosenbergs' guilty verdict. Ethel's involvement was unclear, and the couple's punishment seemed harsh. The notion of innocent and guilty is not straightforward in the case. The truth became murkier in 1995 when the U.S. National Security Agency made public documents from the case. Included was a 1944 cable sent from New York to Moscow by Julius Rosenberg. It showed he was engaged in some level of espionage with the Soviet Union. The information was unsettling to family members at first, but many unanswered questions remained. There was no proof that Julius passed on the secret of the atomic bomb. That was the reason why he and his wife were executed.
The question of guilt and innocence was never something that I felt was my role to deal with. The Cold War was heating up, and there was a bomb, and he believed that the Soviet Union might have represented the balance of power. He believed that the Soviet Union also represented a better way of life.
Ethel and Julius both came from large families, but no one offered to take care of their orphaned sons. 2 left-wing intellectuals, Abel and Anne Meeropol, were happy to take them in.
One of my favorite scenes in the film is when I take my father and my uncle to Knickerbocker Village, to the apartment that they lived in with their parents. He's so excited, he's like practically dancing, and then he remembers, in a split second, he remembers that was the elevator that the FBI agents took to come get his father, and he was in the apartment that day.
Actually, when you think about it, those FBI agents rode the same damn elevator.
Yeah, that's true.
On June, whatever it was, July 17th.
Ivy contacted estranged family members to find out more about her grandparents. Almost all of them refused to talk, even off camera.
Oh, you wouldn't even want your voice involved. And you don't want to talk about them because they're too painful? Right. It was hard for me to empathize at first. I really, couldn't help judging them and feeling like, how could this be so hard to talk about 50 years later? It really spoke volumes to what a horrible time it must have been. And these are people that I hadn't really thought about being affected.
I think it's irrational. This is not, there isn't even a Soviet Union anymore. Communism doesn't mean anything. Today, it's much worse to have an Arabic last name than to be a communist.
David Greenglass is Ethel's youngest brother. It was his testimony that led to the conviction of his sister and brother-in-law. He told the court Ethel typed the notes that Julius sent to the Soviets. Then in 2001, Greenglass admitted he had perjured himself. The Meeropols have never confronted him.
Ethel typed my notes. That was Greenglass's story in 1951, and he stuck to it for half a century. But now, he has a different recollection.
I don't know who typed it, frankly. And to this day, I can't even remember that the typing took place.
I decided to drive by his apartment, and it turned out to be one of the most dramatic scenes in the film. And I'm very happy that I stood up to some of my producers who felt that I really needed to go in there like gangbusters, and it would have been a different kind of film.
Oh my God, I mean, it's just like the most innocuous place you could imagine, you know? There's nothing that even says anything about the person who lives there.
I hope people learn to look at history in a way that is not so black and white. History is made by human beings, and it's not, that the gray area is actually where it's most interesting and probably most important to look at.